Thank you for joining us for the Shine 180 podcast, stories of listeners' lives transformed by Jesus. I'm Steph Reynolds, Director of Partner Care here at Shine.fm. I have my dear friends Jamie and Kristen in the studio today, and they are sharing their journey of what God can do in the midst of a horrific accident. Go ahead, Kristen, and introduce yourself to our Shine audience.
I'm Kristen, and I was born here in Illinois. And I was born to two amazing parents, my mom and dad. They have loved each other. They've loved our family, and they have loved and served the Lord faithfully their lives. And when I was born, they chose a church, and that was Parkview Christian Church, for us to have a place to call home. And that's what it was. It was a special place for our family. And it still is. It still is a special place. And so, yeah, it was at church that I got to know some of the most kind and loving and just genuine faith-filled people who were not perfect, but were really trying to serve the Lord and bless him with their lives. And they were pouring themselves out so that people like me and my brothers could know who Jesus was and build a firm foundation of faith. And so, yeah, I've always believed. Believing came easy for me, but I would say that my come to Jesus, my realization of just my sin and my brokenness and my need for him, that didn't come until later. I didn't surrender, and I didn't make him Lord over my life until much later in life.
Hi, I'm Jamie. My story is basically the exact polar opposite of my wife's. If she grew up in a Christian home with a Christian family and Christian friends, I grew up as a Muslim in the south suburbs of Chicago, going to the mosque on the weekends, learning Arabic, and not associating with other people very much outside of that little bubble, the little Arabic bubble that I grew up in. And so kind of came to Christ in my mid-teens, dating a girl. We met, we went to Parkview. Just that relationship and the people at Parkview as a lost teenage boy who was trying to figure out his purpose and who he was. The people at Parkview just really came alongside of me and loved on me well and taught me a lot about just what it was like to be a man and someone who can pursue love imperfectly, but have Jesus fill the gaps and really help me understand what that void was in my heart that I'd been searching for my whole life. So it was crucial. I had a lot of men in my life that poured into me, coming from not only a Muslim background, but also a background where my dad abandoned us when I was just about 2 years old to drugs and alcohol, and growing up with just a single mom who did her best, you know. So the connection, or meeting my wife at Parkview at the time, and really helped show me that there is something deeper to life, and kind of set me on this path to pursuit of Jesus's love.
So how did you two meet? How did that come about?
So the very first time I went to Parkview was like a Wednesday night, and there was like this youth thing, you know. I was, 16 or 17, and her older brother, played on the worship in the little room. So Greg, her brother, who's a pastor in Colorado Springs now, was the very first person that ever talked to me at Parkview, and saw this like lonely kid standing in the hallway going, "Hey, this guy looks like he needs a friend." And so he was my first friend at Parkview, first person I talked to, and that connection led to meeting Kristen and building a friendship there, and Kristen's parents, who ended up taking on a very, mother and father type figure role in my life from the church. It was just cool. So that's kind of how I met her and her family. I don't know if she sees it the same way.
Yeah, but he was like an older brother to me, and just a friend of the family, and yeah.
Well, so later on, I mean, there's a lot more, I think, in her walk with Parkview, or just in pursuit of Jesus with the Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
She always knew there was something deeper, and in pursuit of something more. And so, like, she went to the Christian college and sought after the things that would actually change her heart, knowing there was something more. I, on the other hand, thought, hey, I found God and now I'm invincible, and ended up having a failed marriage and learning the hard way that love still takes a lot of work and a lot of humility. And there's still a lot of brokenness, right? Like in the pursuit, like you have to continually fight for Jesus to change your heart and ask him to humble you and ask the Spirit to just grow you. And so I was coming out of a divorce in my early 20s, and she was in college, and she wanted to date a boy. So like it was kind of, I went to her family's house that night, one night when she was home visiting, to talk to her parents about what I was going through and how to reconcile that, or how to still fight for my marriage at the time, and just understand what this walk was supposed to look like, and she was there and wanted to talk about this boy that she was, liking, that she just kind of went on some trip with. And we went and got some ice cream that night on a motorcycle. And next thing you know, we got hit by a deer on the highway on I-355. And that was kind of like our intro to the next 10 years to follow of where we're at now.
One night changed the next 10 years of both of your lives. So Kristen, share with us your perspective of what happened.
Yeah, everything changed that night for us. I would say, I believed in Jesus and I knew him, it took me going off on my own and kind of finding my own path and who I really was in the Lord. And I think I had been for a long time just relying on someone else's abiding in the Lord, someone else's personal relationship with him, my pastors, the teachers, and all the people who had poured into me. I was going to church and I was going on missions trips and serving and leading, and those are all really good things. But there was still a missing piece. And so my hunger and my thirst for something more, that took me on a couple different adventures before Jamie and I had our accident. I left after high school and I went to a place that I had never heard of before. I went to a little island called Curacao and lived there for a bit. And then I switched schools and ended up at Cornerstone University for worship and ministry. And those were, I think, pivotal moments in my life that were me choosing to surrender and say, okay, God, like I've done things my own way. It's not working out for me. And so I'm handing this over, like whatever it looks like, whatever it means. I want you to come and fill in the gaps. And I want to have this relationship with you, and just come, Holy Spirit, do a work in me. And that's when we had this horrific accident. And so that night, I guess I should...
They're very different perspectives, but the same story, So
it happened on I-355, and the deer charged and hit us, and I went flying off the back, and Jamie went flying forward with the bike. And I suffered from brain bleeds and fractures to my skull and my spine, my scapula. I had a severed liver, and my vocal cords were paralyzed, and I had all these broken ribs. And so if I was going to live through the night, if I was going to live through this, we knew it was going to be a really long road up ahead. And that's exactly what it has been. It's been a hard road. 10 years later, I look like a healthy, fully recovered mom and wife who's living a pretty normal life. But the reality is I'm living with chronic pain every single day, and every breath I take is a reminder that something's broken in me and something's not right. Yeah,
and I think that her struggles are the physical pain side of it. Not to say I still don't have any either, but I think the emotional side of it for me was where God did his work, right? Like that night when I was at her parents', I was there talking about a failed marriage, a failing marriage, right? Divorce, which is not easy. Like, it's hard. So it wasn't like a fun night where I was looking to go just, for a crazy motorcycle ride and have fun and just like enjoy things. Like there were hard conversations happening that night. And, that when we were on that ride, I think the difference is like she blacked out, doesn't remember anything, right? Where kind of the trauma I had to deal with was remembering everything and reconciling, like, okay, God, why do I remember these details? What did they mean? And how does that fit into all this? And so when we were on the highway, the deer ran out and hit us. And I just remember like seeing these black beady eyes just like staring at me, and thinking, this is going to happen. I need, like, we weren't speeding, probably in the right-hand lane doing 65, whatever, maybe 5 over the speed limit. And it just ran right into the side of us. And I remember just tumbling and rolling, for what felt like forever. And by the time I was able to get up, I couldn't see her anywhere. until I realized she was like 50 feet behind us. And I ran back to her and just, she wasn't alive. Like, I mean, it was bad. And I remember seeing the helmet. She had a really expensive, nice helmet on, that like the MotoGP guys wear on the tracks. And the helmet, her head hit so hard that it actually shattered off of her head. And it takes a lot of force for that to happen. So I just remember seeing like the helmet shattered. I remember seeing her eyes rolled back and just like thinking, oh God, like I just killed my friend. Like, you know, in that moment, I couldn't process anything other than just fall to my knees and at the top of my lungs with bloody tears, just screaming, God, help, like wake up my friend, wake her up. Please don't let her die. Like, I can't take this right now. Right. In that moment, it was still about me. Like, I just lost my wife. Now I just killed my friend. Like, what else can happen? You know? And I remember holding her head, remembering, like thinking, don't move her too much. So if she does wake up, I don't paralyze her or something, but, just felt like I cried forever, you know, begging God to wake her. And the accident happened around midnight that night. And there was no one on I-355. So there wasn't a car in sight. I mean, I remember, these are the details I remember vividly, that no one was present behind us, in front of us, oncoming, anywhere. And, you know, after begging God to wake her up, all of a sudden her eyes moved back, you know, from being rolled behind her head, and she took a breath and started breathing. Now, mind you, after the fact, now we know she had collapsed lungs and punctured lungs. Like, her lungs shouldn't have been functioning, but she was breathing and started answering questions. And I remember asking her, what's your name? You know, how old are you? All this kind of stuff. And I don't know where this lady runs up and goes, hey, I saw the deer hit you guys. I'm a nurse. What can I do to help? And in the moment, I didn't realize what she was saying, but I said, help my friend, help her, you know. And then, so she started helping her. I called 911. We got the ambulances coming and all that. And then 5 minutes after that, a guy comes running up and he says, hey, I saw the deer hit you guys. What can I do to help? I'm like, help that lady, help my friend, like, you know, help her until the paramedics come. Ambulances show up. They start working on her. She's alive somehow. And there was a police officer that thought, you know, maybe we were drinking and driving or something, right? And was going through all the questions and just being not very cordial. And he went up to the guy who was helping tend to her, and this guy was helping give the paramedics instructions. Hey, do this, you know, here's her injuries, basically diagnosing her on the scene so that they can get her from the ambulance to the hospital. And the police officer was kind of telling him, hey, you know, back off, let them do their jobs. Like, you know, what do you think, you're a doctor or something? And he said, yes, actually I am. I'm like, so, okay, a nurse and a doctor show up in the middle of the night out of nowhere when no cars are around, you know, and I'm overhearing this, just trying to get an update on her. And it was just incredible. And so they were able to keep her alive to the hospital, to the point where they can get her hooked up to everything. And then she was in a coma for a couple of weeks after that, but they kept her alive. There's no record on the police reports or anything of who those people were. You know, there's record that a doctor and a nurse showed up. You know, like working through those details in my head. I remember going back to the hospital the following week to visit her the first time, and her dad asking, you know, did they give you their contact info? Because I want to reach out and thank them. You know, they saved my daughter's life. And I'm like, well, the police report should be coming in the mail. You know, I was told it'll come. It'll have all the information on it, however that works. And that document showed up like a month later, and it was wiped clean, empty. I opened an envelope with a blank piece of paper in it, and I remember calling the police department going, you guys mailed me an empty document. I just need to know who these two people were. And she's like, I can look it up in the system, and there was no record of them, you know. It's just that everything was gone, you know. And she woke up from the coma the one day I was talking to her, and I remember her telling me, I don't think we'll ever know who those people were. And I'm like, well, why do you say that? She's like, because when I was in a coma, God told me that those were two angels that showed up to save my life. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, wow. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was hard to believe at the moment, but you look at the miracles on top of miracles that have happened since then, and it's undeniably true. Yeah,
we've been surrounded. We've had a multitude of angels and the presence of God with us through it all. I mean, he's come through for us over and over again through the last 10 years. There's been a lot of dark moments. I wish I could say that, oh, my faith's been strong, and I've been strong through it all. But no, I've grown really tired, and frustrated and been disappointed a lot. I've gone through so many procedures and surgeries and had any kind of therapy that you can imagine. And so much of that has just fallen short, and we haven't gotten answers, and surgeries haven't worked. And one of the first things I was told when I woke up from a coma was that I may only speak with a whisper again. And I've always loved to sing for Jesus, always. But that was one of the biggest defeats I think I experienced in my initial recovery, because I was grieving what might never come of my voice, and how the ways that I wouldn't be able to use it for the Lord like I thought that I would. And obviously that's one of the many miracles that took place. I got my voice back, and it's not what it was. It's stronger. I would say it's more powerful than it's ever been. And I burst at the seams when we're worshiping, because I can't help it. We're just, yeah.
So tell me how Christian music, or, worship music, how that fills your soul. Cause you even went to school to be a worship leader.
Right. Yeah.
So tell me your experience because you both are very musically talented.
Music has played a role, and believe it or not, Shine.fm has played one of the biggest roles in my life, because when I became a Christian, when I went to Parkview, in high school, I've always been a drummer, and I love to drum, and I was in a band, and I didn't know Christian music was a thing. I've never heard of Christian bands. I didn't know who Reliant K was, or Hawk Nelson, or some of these old little pop punk bands back from when we were younger. And I remember stumbling upon Shine.fm and hearing music that was quote unquote positive, and I'm like, what is this? And then all of a sudden people were talking about these bands at church, and I realized I could play drums on the worship team at church. And so for, I think 14 years, I was a drummer on the worship team at Parkview, and she always sang and led in the youth group and stuff like that. And so music just, for us, is a huge connection, because I think it allowed us both to understand how lyrics and emotion can just be translated in such a way that you just, it helps you get emotions out that you didn't know you could sometimes, and use words and melodies and just feelings that you can share with someone, whether it's a whole entire worship congregation or your spouse sitting next to you. There's a bond that comes with that, and the Spirit has a way of moving that's just, it's kind of hard to describe sometimes, And so I think for us, the connection in music is huge, and being on worship together was awesome. I remember after the accident, after her recovery, if it was in June of 2013, I don't think me and her spoke again until probably November. She came to first time she ever left her house after all the physical therapy and learning how to walk again and all that kind of stuff. And she came to a Bible study, and then that night she sat down at the piano, and we must have sang and played music, just the two of us, for almost 2 hours. It was crazy. And I think that's kind of when there was a spark happening, and God was going, okay, guess what? Something's going to happen here between you guys. It wasn't until way later, because we never thought in a million years we'd be together, in a good way, I think, right? That sounds bad when I say that.
I think worship too, it's been a way for us to release emotion, but also for me, it's been a weapon. These melodies have been a weapon for me, just against the enemy. The devil has tried to take me out with one thing after another that has come about in my recovery. And when that happens, I stand up and I sing, and by the power of the Holy Spirit, he gives me strength to just get back up and worship again and keep going. And it's been just a powerful tool that the Lord has given me. It was always a beautiful thing that I loved, and I always came back to worship and to music. But it takes on a whole different thing when you've walked through difficult times, and you can proclaim these truths knowing that you've walked through it, you've lived it.
And I think God has used music time and time again to remind us of just the humility that we don't deserve to be in the places that we are sometimes, and how something that a lot of people can take selfishly or make about themselves, when you use worship for the glory of God, the power it has to not only transform other people, but to transform and rock your heart internally, right? I remember thinking, after the divorce and then after the accident, thinking, I don't deserve anything. Like, what else? How else can I screw up and mess up, and very, self-serving and just very sad or whatever. And then getting to a place where it's like, okay, God, use me, use whatever, I thought I came to Jesus when I was younger, and maybe I did. But use these tragedies, use my heart, like finally break me to a point where I no longer want to do anything other than serve you. And then that's when I actually stopped playing the drums at Parkview and I joined the vocal team. And this girl joined the vocal team and we were dating. And I just remember feeling those things of like, I still don't deserve to be here. I've screwed up so much in life, to the point where I grew up despising Christians and not liking white people. And I say that because I'm Arabic, not, but like just as a brown person living in a white world, dealing with the racism and just dealing with never feeling adequate or good enough, or being in high school and 9/11 happens and never feeling good enough and feeling like I need to hide, to like, I'm going to have a marriage and have it be perfect, and then have that fail, and then have the accident, and like watch this girl who's saved her life for this pursuit of Jesus. And I feel like I just took that all away from her through this accident, and then one day being on stage and looking to the side at like my fiance that's singing worship with me going, I do not deserve this. This is incredibly humbling, and just weeping, or like using worship when she says it's a weapon for her. Can barely lift her right arm up past her shoulder. And I remember the first time she was so lost in worship and so lost in music. And we weren't on worship together, and it was at Parkview, and we were like a Tuesday night rehearsal, and I'm staring at the stage, and whatever song she was leading, she had finally just like let go of it all and surrendered, and both of her arms were sky high. And I just remember thinking, she's not supposed to be able to lift her arm that high. And it's like, it was overwhelming, and I started weeping. And so that's when I knew, like, this girl is going to lead worship and sing, and just God's going to use her story of brokenness and redemption for his glory, like beyond all measure. And he has.
Oh, yeah. And for I was, on this journey of trying to fill this hunger and this thirst that I had for something more, and wanting my life to bear fruit and to mean something, and to feel like I had a purpose. And now he's doing that, but it's because the posture of my heart, it shifted. It wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't, God, come do this for me. The Holy Spirit moved me from very self-centered me to surrendered me. And so now it's like, I'm at this point where I don't want anything if he's not in it. It's all for him, and whatever it looks like, I would suffer another 10 years with chronic pain if it meant for his glory. And that's a hard thing to say. Yeah. And there have been many days, because we just came up on our 10-year anniversary since the accident, and a couple of weeks beforehand, I was in the valley again, just hurting and grieving, and just really disappointed with the outcome of the last 10 years. I'm not where I thought that I would be.
And a lot of that is because you just had another surgery. So in December, they ran wires up her spine and put electrodes, and she's got a battery pack now. She's like a wireless robot, so she has to like charge every day, and this thing's supposed to help take pain away. And that hasn't worked yet.
It's not. So, yeah, but Jesus has shown himself to be everything that he has ever said that he would be to me. And so I know that as long as I stay close and connected, as long as I abide in him, that I'm going to be okay. That in the midst of my pain, I know that I'll be okay.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to highlight too, as part of this, is like coming out of our accident, and then living 10 years and having 3 little beautiful boys. We have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old now, and having kids with a wife with chronic back pain who's down a lot, it's a lot of work. It's hard, and sometimes you wonder, how the heck am I going to get through this? And I think to highlight the importance of community and just a church that is chasing after Jesus, you cannot get through life without a solid Christian community who, it's just, again, it's humbling, right? And so I think when we got married and had a kid, we had to make some hard choices and move to Indiana. We moved to Valparaiso, Indiana, and found a church called Calvary Church out there, and Calvary Church. And we were scared because we're leaving the church she grew up in. We're leaving the church that I found Jesus in, that helped transform both of our lives, that carried us and prayed for us through the accident and everything. And we're going to go start over, right, with no one. And God has provided, surgery after surgery, year after year, just one thing after another. God's people show up, and it's so humbling, and it's a reminder that serving him and doing all you can for his glory, it's
better than anything.
It's better than anything. And you never know whose life you can change, and you never know how your heart will just be completely rocked,
So if there was one piece of advice, and you can both take turns on this, that you would be able to share to that one person listening right now that is in the midst of the suffering, what would it be? What did you hold the tightest to in the midst of your hardest day?
I want her to go first.
If you think about your hardest, right after the accident, or maybe there was a harder day since, what has gotten you back up?
Oh gosh, the scriptures have come to life for me since the accident. Who my dad would sit at my bedside night after night and recite the 23rd Psalm to me. And by the time I came through and was speaking again, we had it memorized. And so we continued that habit. I was moved home and had home health care for a while, and we continued to recite the Psalm together. And I still think on that when I'm having my hard nights. But I know that the Lord's words are true, that he will take my dark night and he will bring joy and strength in the morning, that his mercies are new each day, that he's good and he's faithful if you stay close and connected to him. And community's a wonderful thing, and it's important to stay connected there too, but there's nothing like a personal, intimate relationship with Jesus. He's enough, and he's the only thing that'll ever be enough.
That question's a hard one because it's still hard. The day-to-day is still hard. I think what keeps me going is the fact that I know it's not about me, that it's about Jesus. And when I shift my focus and my heart to him, and I know that the Spirit lives within me, dwells within me, and I ask him to get me through day to day or week to week or whatever, it makes the moments of joy that much more joyful, and it makes the moments of pain or sadness or frustration or anger just that much less hard to manage, and as long as you have something that, like a discipline in your life that can continually push you back towards the heart of Jesus and towards the Spirit, as long as you can get to a place, like for me, it's worship music. When I'm having a hard day, I can put any kind of song on, a worship song. I can go online, I can flip on the radio to Shine.fm, I can put on anything, and that worship music always brings me back to a place of, it's not about me, it's about Jesus, and asking him to just use me to glorify him. It takes the pressure off of me to feel better, right? It takes the pressure off of me to feel like I need to perform, or that I need to show up as a husband or as a dad or do all the things. It's a reminder that I don't need to do all that. God's got me. And if I can't do it, God's going to send someone to come do the physical things that I can't do, right? Friends, community, grandparents, whoever. And if it's an emotional thing, he's going to carry that weight for me. And it's just, I think worship music and prayer always brings me back to a place of just reflecting on him and his word.
Count the joy come every battle.
Yeah.
Because I know that's where he's going to be every time.
Amen. Count it a joy come every battle. Whatever battle you are facing today, God is with you and will help you continue to get up and stand and sing the song of God's goodness, just like Jamie and Kristen. This was Shine 180, Jamie and Kristen's story. Stories of forgiveness, redemption, and restoration. I'm Steph Reynolds, Director of Partner Care here at Shine.fm. Your story offers hope and encouragement to others. Share your story today by calling 855-987-9866. That's 855-987-9866. Shine 180, Stories of lives transformed by God because of his great faithfulness.